But I'll kick it off, and I have plenty of questions, but I think we'd like to be able to answer all the questions that you have, too. So, my first one, Julian, I think we ought to begin at the beginning, don't you think? And so, I think since there's been so much discussion here on genes and environment, tell us a little bit about your parents and your early years. Where'd you come from? Where'd you grow up? You know?
I think I know, yes.
You do? Good.
Yes, I grew up in Atlanta, near Atlanta, in a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia, and my mother was a registered nurse, and my father had about a 6th grade education and did various things, real estate, house building, ran a gasoline truck route, did things of that kind. And it was a lower middle class community. There was very little intellectual stimulation in the community, but we had nothing but academics in the school because they had nothing else. We had no music to speak of, no drama, no voice training, no instrumental training, so we just studied algebra. The high school I attended was a 11-year school system, so I got through it at age 15 before I was 16 years old. And the curriculum was fixed. Everybody took 2 years of algebra and geometry, and everybody took 2 years of Latin and 2 years of another foreign language. So we did get a pretty good academic education. I was glad for that. But the nice fringe things were missing from the community because it was pretty much of a lower middle class community and working class community.
Now, when you went through school, did you go through every single grade, or did you get skipped?
I skipped. It was rather strange. I was in the 1st grade. I made all C's. I remember the teacher said I kept my feet on the desk, and that disturbed her. And, there were no kindergartens in those days, so there was no preparation for 1st grade. You just went to 1st grade, and they started telling you what 1 + 1 was, and A, B, C, D, and so forth. But in 2nd grade, I made all A's. In the 3rd grade, I made all A's, and the teacher said to my mother, "Your son doesn't need to go to the 4th grade." So, although no one asked me, I would have said I didn't want to go skip a grade, but I skipped the 4th grade, went on to the 5th grade, leaving my girlfriend behind, my dearly beloved girlfriend, and my boyfriend behind. And socially, it wasn't as good a move as I would have liked because it took a long time to get back in track socially after that. So I went on through the 11-year system. As I say, I finished at 15. I then went to a state residential junior college. We were a rather poor family, and this was an inexpensive place. Pretty good place, actually. The teachers were good. And after that, I went to State Teachers College, which was okay in some respects. I liked organic chemistry, but I didn't like those education courses much. They were pretty dull. So I got through in 1 year. So I ended up at barely 19. I was 19 in July, and I finished in August. And I went out teaching in a great big school in Atlanta, Georgia, big high school. At 19, taught a whole year before I was 19, taught 2 years before I could vote. I remember one day one of the students, who was a 10th grader, came to me at study hall and said, "Mr. Stanley, why don't we go out and vote together today?" And I couldn't tell him that I couldn't vote. He was 10th grade and he could vote. He was 21 already. So my professional life has been a total of 65 years so far because I started so early in 1937. And I've been, aside from some detour during the war years when I spent 44 months in the Air Force, been entirely devoted to professional things. I did retire technically in 1984 from Hopkins, quit teaching, but I hang around the place a couple of days a week for about 8 hours a couple of days a week and do various things there now. And I've published some. I have an article coming out in Education and Psychological Measurement soon, and some other things in the works.
Well, going back again, just one more thing I'd like to pick up on. When you were accelerated, did you stand out in any way? Did everybody notice you because you were smaller than average?
I was a great big guy. No, I had no trouble. On my 12th birthday, I was 5 feet 10 and a half inches tall and weighed 145 pounds. And I was almost a giant. My best friend weighed 88 pounds. And people thought I was mentally retarded because he had this great big guys around this little kid. So it wasn't entirely a help. But on the other hand, it kept me from looking so conspicuous as if I'd been 4 feet tall.
So at the time, if somebody had asked you, you wouldn't have wanted to accelerate, but now you're looking back on your experiences, do you think it was the right decision, or are you glad you did it?
Well, it made me more academic, I'm pretty sure, because I lacked, in the 5th, 6th, and 7th grades, I lacked a good deal of social life, because I wasn't in with my age, not with a lot of my age groups, but just my friends. I moved to a big elementary school where I knew nobody, and nobody knew me, and I think that probably I benefited in the long run from a more academic approach. I never was very good mechanically. My father was a mechanical, not genius, but a very able fellow mechanically, and one day in disgust he said to me, "Son, you better make your living with your brain because you'll never make it with your hands." And that's one about the best advice I ever got in my life, I think. Yeah.
Well, you know, you have spent a lifetime making sure, or at least half of a lifetime, making sure that bright kids aren't bored. Yet, when I remember back to Hopkins days and you reminisced about your days during World War II, you said that boredom was your greatest stimulator for you to actually achieve even more.
You know, World War II was a great favor for me, although I didn't think so at the time. 28 months overseas and 44 months in the service, which was the exact duration of World War II, was a great deal. But the GI Bill came along, and I'd been a fairly casual undergraduate student at this, this rudimentary teacher's college. So I thought, well, I'm still single, I'm 27, I'll take advantage of this GI Bill. I'll go to a good school. I've been going to these routine schools, and I'll go to a real good one. So I applied to Harvard and Yale and Chicago and Columbia, and I got into Harvard for the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And I went up there 8 years after I'd finished my bachelor's at this teacher's college, and I was terrified. I thought, I'm going to flunk out of this place. This is a tough place. And I worked extremely hard, and I discovered I like to work extremely hard. I like to do important things. The students who had been there during the war sent a representative at one point to ask me not to work so hard. I was running the grade curve, they said. I got A pluses, they got B minuses. So, but I kept working hard, and I overdid it pretty badly. Made too good of grades and established too much of a reputation, and I had to keep it up. I think I would have settled to be a B student if I'd known how to be one, but I didn't have any clue as to what to do. But it was interesting that there was a fellow in my class, you know, one of these marker people, I would call him, who was the grandson of a Nobel laureate and the son of a professor in the medical school at Harvard. And he was a graduate of the Groton School and Harvard, cum laude from Harvard. And I discovered to my great surprise that I was as able as he was, and I knew as much as he did. I couldn't believe that after the routine background. But one thing I need to tell you, I did teach school 4.5 years. I taught a variety of subjects 4.5 years before the war. So I, in effect, had 3 careers. I've been a teacher, high school teacher, regular tenured high school teacher, 4.5 years. And then from after the war and after my doctoral training at Harvard, I had, from 1949 to 71, a career in psychometrics, and I was enjoying it. But then about that time, I got a big grant from the Spencer Foundation to work with mathematically talented youngsters, and that took me out of the psychometric area almost entirely. And so I've had basically 3 different careers, and I've enjoyed all of them. But it's been wonderful to be able to shift from one to the other, and not just be stuck in something. The last thing I did was, I guess, a major contribution, I hope, was a big, long chapter on reliability theory in the educational measurement handbook that Bob Thorndike edited. And I worked hard. I was at the Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences for a couple of years, and I had time to really work on it. But when I got through with the chapter, some of you know that chapter probably, reliability theory, classical theory, very heavily mathematical treatment. I began to think, well, surely Cronbach can understand this, and J. Millman and a few others, but I don't know what I've done here. I've written a treatise which is useful as a reference for the people who can use it, but which is not intelligible to a lot of people. So about that time,